Welcome to Hour 5 of JGA's Global Payfest 25, a 24-hour journey around the world exploring the complexities and unique challenges of global payroll. I'm Abu Chowdhury, Director here at JGA Recruitment and your host for this session, and I'm delighted to continue our event with our focus here on China. As multinational companies expand their operations into China, gaining a comprehensive understanding of the unique payroll landscape is not just beneficial, it's essential. China's payroll system is shaped by a unique blend of national policies and highly localized regulations that vary significantly across its provinces and cities. From navigating the intricacies of social insurance contributions and housing funds to staying compliant with regional tax thresholds and labor laws, managing payroll in China demands both precision and adaptability. In addition, frequent regulatory updates, varying local enforcement practices, and the need for accurate real-time reporting add layers of complexity for global payroll teams. Technology integration, data privacy, and cross-border compliance also play an increasingly critical role in shaping payroll strategies in the Chinese context. In today's session, we'll explore these key challenges and opportunities and hear from our expert who understands the realities of operating payroll in one of the world's most dynamic and regulated economies. I'm thrilled to be joined by Vijay Sharma, Global Payroll Manager from Project 44 and an expert on Chinese payroll. Vijay has over 15 years experience managing global payrolls and teams and holds expertise in payroll systems, process improvements, and shared services management. Vijay, thank you for joining us today. Share your expertise with our global audience. Could you please tell us a little bit about yourself, your experience, and obviously your experience with Chinese payroll?
Yeah, thank you, Abu. Thank you for the introduction. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and ni hao to everybody around the world. About me, as Abu has mentioned already, that I work in the payroll domain, and it has been 15 plus years since I have been helping the companies to set up the payroll operations within the shared services in the Krakow area. When I started in the payroll domain back in 2010-11, there were not many companies which had even a shared services. Forget about the payroll department in the Krakow office. So everything was very decentralized. And then, back in 2010-11, I got the opportunity to set up the centralized payroll operations for EMEA, for one of the very big telecommunication organization in the past, and that was the experience and that was the opportunity which I received, and I grabbed it with both hands. Did not knew much about the payroll back in the days. I took a leap of faith, jumped into the payroll domain, and made my way through, and started with the European countries, built the team in Krakow office, centralized the payrolls, trained the team, because as I said in the beginning, even people were not available in the Krakow area who had global payroll experience. So we had to build the team, we had to train the people from scratch. So that was quite a challenging and a learning and a rewarding experience, which I had along with my team members. And then I think then the word just went out, and everybody thought it is possible to centralize the payroll, and more companies they were setting up their finance operations in the Krakow area. In the beginning, they were bringing in the accounts receivable, payables, GL, and then I think somebody said we can do payroll as well. And then the payroll started coming in, because along with payroll, some of the HR operations were also getting centralized into the Krakow office. So if GL is here, HR is here, then why can't payroll could be also done from a centralized location? And that was basically the beginning of the payroll, let's say, centralization, or the demand for payroll centralization in the Krakow area. And I was very lucky to be part of that wave, or the initial wave, and basically learned a lot of lessons, a lot of mistakes which we did in the beginning, and learned from those mistakes, became smarter, stronger, and were able to deliver with flying colors along with my team. So that was a brief introduction about me. Abu, if that helps. Do you have any questions?
No, it absolutely does. I mean, look, I think you're 100% right there, because we've seen a real change in how business operate, global business operating, and where they are this over the last 10, 15 years, they have been centralizing their functions over in Poland, Warsaw, Krakow, Eastern Europe, Hungary as well. So it's interesting to understand that obviously you were there at the beginning when it all took place, right? So
Yeah.
and building a team and hiring staff and training them. And now, look, Poland pretty much a hub for shared service centers, right? So we've seen it now when we're recruiting staff in Poland. So it's definitely there's definitely talent there. So thanks to you and in your organization, right? So yeah.
Yeah, I was just, as I said, I was just lucky to be here at the right
Yeah,
time, at the right moment.
yeah,
And then along with the EMEA payroll, then first we delivered the EMEA payroll, then came the North American payroll, South American, Latin American payrolls, and then along with that came the Asia Pacific payrolls. Asia Pacific payrolls were a bit of a challenge to be processed from the Krakow office to begin with, because if you do follow the sun strategy, by the time you start getting operational, the team in the Asia Pacific is already wrapping up their day, so you are a day, almost a day behind them. So that was kind of a challenge, but then again, we overcame that challenge by doing the early morning shifts so that we can match certain hours of the day with the team in the Asia Pacific, where they are in Australia, whether they are in India, or they are in China, or they are in Singapore or Malaysia. So we kind of rolled back our clocks, and we had early morning shifts starting at 6 or 5 in the morning to make sure that we do have some 4 to 5 hours on a daily basis as common working hours with those team members on the other side of the globe. So that basically helped us, and I think that has been the norm since then in majority of the companies who run the Asia Pacific payrolls from the Krakow office, that they have the early morning shift. That's how they manage that. And then for the other side of the pond, a majority of the payrolls are either processed within the normal Central European time zone, or sometimes the days are split between the morning shift and the evening shift or the afternoon shift. So people start around 12 or 11 in the morning, and then they work up until 5 or 6 in the evening, so that they have some common hours with the people, folks on the other side of the pond.
yeah.
Yeah, so that's how basically the work is managed in the Krakow shared services to support the business operations globally across the world. And I know that today I have been invited to talk about the payroll, the Chinese payroll, my experience about the China payroll, and if I can share some anecdotes about how to efficiently manage the payroll in China. I think a lot of that detail I have already kind of said in my prelude thing. So yeah. So regarding the payroll for China, I think there are recent regulatory updates which we must follow when it comes to the payroll for China, and the best practices for the multinational organizations is very eminent, and that they should not deviate from that, because China is a very strictly managed country from the statutory point of view. So you cannot be on the other side of the law by any means. And as with all our sessions today, we will walk through the practice case study that demonstrates how to tackle the complex Chinese payroll scenarios. We will try our best to give you some more insights into it. And finally, we'll address some questions that payroll professionals often encounter when they are trying to run the China payroll, which I have kind of given you the glimpse in the opening paragraph of
Mm.
my presentation. So let's get started with the Chinese with the payroll or the Chinese payroll. Do you have any questions on this, Abu, before we dive in?
No, 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 no. Absolutely. Let's dive in. Thank you,
Okay,
Vijay.
thank you, Abu. So one more time, welcome everybody to for joining us on the Global Payroll Fest organized by JGA group, and I'm excited to share some insights into the Chinese payroll and help multinational organizations understand the unique aspects of processing payroll in China. So as I have already mentioned about the labor law and the labor contract law, the national laws in China are a very fundamental framework regarding the employment relationships, which includes that you have to abide by the national minimum wage standards, and you also have to abide by the working hours as mandated by the state or as mandated by the region. And also there are certain mandatory benefits which must be offered to the team members or employees in China. And also regarding the labor law and the labor contract law, whenever certain contracts are made in China, I have received that question quite often. Can we have a contract in USD? Well, you can have a contract in USD in China, but 99.9% the contracts are approved by the Chinese government only in RMB. They do not approve the employment contracts in USD. So I had received that questions, and then we investigated that along with some of my statutory partners back in the days, and we came to the conclusion it is possible to do a USD contract, but there were lots of challenges to hoop around. So in the end, we settled for the RMB contract, which was just much more easier to manage and execute. And then comes the social insurance laws. Again, there are certain social insurance laws which have been set up in China based on their own social practices, which must be followed and which sometimes also vary by the location, whether you are in the Shanghai region, whether you are in some other region or you are in the Beijing region. So it depends on the region as well. And also regarding the individual income tax regimes in China, this regime is fairly stable, to be honest, but it sometimes time to time it does gets revamped by the government based on the requirements of the government, based on how much tax relaxation or how much tax they want to collect from their individuals in China. But overall, the income tax calculation in China is pretty straightforward from what I've seen as of now. And then there are certain regional regulations. There are certain provincial and municipal governments and authorities. They have set their own standards for minimum wages, as I was mentioning in the first point. And as well as for the social insurance contribution rates and housing fund contribution rates, we have to follow the Chinese government federal rules, and then also they are sometimes complemented and supplemented by the regional provincial government or the municipal government or authorities rules. Mostly it's not supplemented, mostly it's complemented by them. So they just ask you to collect more or contribute more based on their local requirements. Do you have any questions on this, Abu, or should we?
No, no, not at all, not at all. It'd be interesting to understand what the key Chinese payroll challenges are. Yeah, if
Yeah,
you can run
definitely.
through that, yeah.
Yeah, so the as I said, China is a vast country. There are lots of regions. So we're gonna touch base on the very high
Mm.
level. So regional variations in China. Let's talk about the social insurances first. So one of the most distinctive features of Chinese payroll is the regional variation in social insurance schemes. With the basic framework is national insurance implemented details which vary significantly across the landscape of China. So contribution rates might differ by city and province. There could be certain city-related taxes, which sometimes are fairly stable in certain big cities, but in some smaller cities they were not there. But the smaller cities are also coming up with some city-specific taxes. Some of them could be the environmental taxes which employees have to pay, like in order for the usage of the public transport or certain those kind of things. And then there are also contribution bases, which also vary by location, which also vary by the income level of the individual, depending upon how much they earn and where they are located at. So that also has an impact on the contribution pay base for the social insurance contribution. And then also there is eligibility, and the class and the calculation methods also vary by local variations. The eligibility might vary as per the age, whether and as per the demographic and as per your marital status as well, how many kids you have. So that also does impacts the social insurance contributions in China, like in many other countries across the globe. And also, there are certain regulations for the foreign nationals who are living in China, depending upon where they are living in China and which city, which location, which municipality they are located at. They also are mandated by the local government or by the federal government to participate in the local and the federal tax regimes as it is for the other employees. So depending upon what kind of contract they have, if they have a local China contract, then there are certain guidelines to be followed. If they are on an expat contract for a fixed number of period, like less than 183 days in a year, then they follow a separate tax regime for China. So, but then again, it's very subjective depending upon the individual whom we will be talking about.
mm,
So if we now compare the I talked about on a very high level about the difference between the state or the difference between the location in China. So if we can compare, let's say, two big locations in China, Shanghai and Beijing. So in Shanghai, the pension contribution is currently set up as 16% for employers and 8% for the employees. However, in Beijing, the pension contribution is also 16% for employees and 8% for employees, but it has different caps based on the income level, based on your demographic, based on your family size as well, like
mm,
how much contribution you would like to make. So that also depends on that as well. So these are the basic two differences on the pension contributions in China between Beijing and Shanghai. And then also, depending upon these two cities, the medical insurance rates and the unemployment insurance rates are also slightly different. They have recently been updated, so I will say that I will not talk about those rates because I need to bring those rates into my purview right now. But yes,
yeah.
medical insurance rates and the unemployment insurance rates also vary between these two cities, and not only between these two cities, they also vary amongst these cities versus other cities as well. So that also has to be kept in mind. Then there is the individual income tax calculation. Since 2019, the individual income tax regime in China is fairly stable, but there are certain guidelines which employers must handle for their employees. Basic thing is that the monthly withholding base is a cumulative withholding methodology which must be followed, and then based on the income level of the employees, the cumulative income level of the employees, the necessary tax brackets are assigned, and then the taxes are applied. Then there are special deductions which needs to be applied. Like, if you would like to hire an employee in China, then they would be entitled for to contribute towards the education allowance. They would be entitled for the housing mortgage interest deduction, and they will also be entitled for the housing rent deduction, and they will also be responsible for the elder care deduction. So these are the deductions which can help them to reduce their taxable base. So
Mm,
so you have a taxable base of, let's say, X amount, and you can provide certain tax reducing deductions, and then you can say these are my tax reducing deductions because I'm not making any money. These are my expenses because of these circumstances, and then you can take a tax reduction from these ones. And then the employers must also help their employees, or it's a mandatory now to submit the individual income tax return for the employees. So this is the annual reconciliation filing support which employers must provide to their employees in China. And as I mentioned in a couple of minutes ago, that if you are a non-resident taxpayer, or you are a foreigner or a non-resident taxpayer, then there are certain criterias which must be followed. They are quite technical in nature, so I don't think so this is the right platform to talk about that, because
mm,
we don't want to give out any information on which somebody might act and might make a mistake. So it's always better to talk to your individual tax expert, or to your payroll provider, or to your a third party payroll vendor who can advise you on these items, right? So how to handle if there is an employee who was a resident and then who later on became a non-resident, or the vice versa, who was a non-resident and later on became a resident tax resident, then how the tax regime will be handled for your employees in China, right? And then there is a specific treatment for annual bonuses and equity compensation. So the annual bonuses, when you give any annual bonus to your employees in China, then they are not taxed based on their cumulative income. I think there is a separate flat tax percentage, which is like around 10 to 15%, which is applied on the annual bonuses, and then that is a part of the basic salary calculations which employees do get. So, and then in case of any equity compensation which is given to the employees, the equity compensation in China is also pretty strict to manage. If you, let's say, are giving your employees in China the equity based compensation, and the companies are listed not in China, for example, they are listed in UK, or they are listed in the US, or somewhere else in the world apart from Hong Kong, then there is a special regime which must be followed. how employees can gain access to their tax statement, or can gain access to their equity statements, how they can sell, and how they can remit the money back into China, into their bank accounts if they ever sell their stocks. So these are the things which are a bit technical in nature, and again, I would refer to the experts who can guide on how to handle the equity compensation for your employees in China. However, if your employees are in China and if you have the company listed on the Chinese stock exchange or the Hong Kong stock exchange, I think the movement between these two stock exchanges is quite easy, and then employees can easily gain access to their equity portals. There is no Chinese firewall which is stopping the employees
Mm,
from accessing their equity awards as well. So this is much more easier then, right? And then we have the housing fund management, which we were talking about. So the housing fund management features that it is a mandatory contribution. So contribution rates range from 5% to 12%, again, depending upon the location. And then there are local policies on the withdrawal of these housing fund contributions made by the employer. So depending upon where you live and how much your employer is contributing, there is a lock-in period, and apart from after that lock-in period, there is a possibility that the person in China can apply for the housing fund support from the government, and then they can provide all the necessary documentation that this has been contributed by them as well as by their employer on under their name. So all the details will be electronically available, and then they can gain out of it. As always, keep an eye on the regulatory changes. If there will be any regulatory changes or adjustments, those must be taken into consideration. And then there are some special allowances and the benefits treatment. As I already mentioned, that there's a difference between the foreign employee or the local employee. The foreign employees most of the times are tax exempt, or most of the times are exempt from contributing towards certain allowances and benefits because they are not the proper tax residents of China. So, for example, they will not be required to do a housing allowance contribution or a children's education allowance contribution, language training allowance contribution, home leave allowance contributions, and meal and laundry allowance contributions. But as I say, depending upon how long they have been China and what sort of tax regime they are following, please speak with your dedicated payroll provider and get a tailor-made help from your vendor. Then comes regarding processing the payroll requirements. So of course, the payroll requirements are going to be also bespoke when it comes to China because it is a country and it has got its own set of things which must be followed. But definitely in China, if you want, it is also possible that you can get bilingual pay slips. So if you are a person who is living in China and who speaks Chinese, absolutely fine. But if you are a person who has been living in China for a specific number of period and you do not speak the local language, so you will be by law given a pay slip in China in Chinese or Mandarin language, and then on top of that you can also ask for a complimentary English language pay slip for yourself. So this is quite doable, and majority of the payroll vendors, they do support bilingual pay slip portals. And then official tax receipts. If you are going to make any tax receipts or you are going to file any local taxes, then your employer will help you with filing those local taxes, and then definitely you can obtain those tax receipts as and when it will be required by you. Then there is a red seal. So definitely company jobs, and I'm right now we have a payroll operations in China for my organization, and every single payment which we make has to be stamped. So we have a
mm,
stamp which has been given to our payroll provider, and then every single document which we receive, which we approve, of course, we approve it electronically. But then again, every single document has a red stamp on it with all the necessary details mentioned on the stamp. Then the scanned copy is sent back to us for our archives, and then the hard copy is kept there for the local from the local law perspective. And also there is a strict data privacy guideline, like we have a GDPR in Europe. So China has the similar to GDPR. It is called Personal Information Protection Law, or PIPL. So based on that, it is quite challenging sometimes to move the accounting or the payroll related information outside of China. So that is the reason why majority of the payroll vendors, they sometimes do not have their own payroll teams in China. So they are majority of the times they contract with a subcontracted payroll vendor in China, and then they run the payroll through that payroll vendor in China, because then they know depending upon which location they are based out of, then based on that they will speak with the necessary statutory authorities, and if they have to even walk into the local office to sort out something for you, they will be able to do that for you. So that is why it is very important to make sure that you have a good and a very supportive payroll vendor in China. Even though you might be dealing with some big payroll companies like ADP or Cerillion, or a couple of other countries, a couple of other big payroll companies, they will also have a local payroll vendor in China who will be helping them
Mm.
to run the operations. So this is very critical. Uh, and then we can also talk about the recent regulatory updates in China. So in China, the payroll landscape continuously is evolving as in the other parts of the world, especially after the COVID. Payroll has evolved quite a lot globally, right? In terms of some of the regulations regarding work
Mm.
from home, regarding support from work from home, regarding other types of leaves which did not existed in the past. Now they do exist, and we have to make sure that we account for them on the payroll side. So here are some of the key and recent upcoming changes on the China payroll side. So first is the social credit impact and on employment. So this is, sometimes we might have heard that you need to earn in China social credits. So depending upon your social behavior, the social credit is, you have a social credit account or a wallet on which you get certain points and penalties, and based on that your employment might get impacted if you are based out of China. It does not matter you are a Chinese national or you are not a Chinese national. If you're living in China, if you're part of that, so and you will be part of that social credit scheme, so you make sure that you are a well-behaved citizen or a well-behaved
Mm.
person of the society, right? Not to have negative points on that social credit system, and because it might have impact on your employment. Then we'll talk about the digital transformation of tax administration. Of course, China being one of the countries which is very heavy tax savvy country, and they have moved quite a lot of their workload, which was quite a paper driven workload back 10, I would say 10, 15 years back. I think they are one of the countries in the world which is aiming for almost 100% digitalization over the course of the period, and that day is not that far away. We already see that a lot of things are already in an electronic format in China. And even if you are, let's say, from China, and if you are not living in China, you can have an app from the Chinese government, and you can do all your tax filings using that app, provided you have a Chinese social security number. So you can
Mm.
be anywhere in the world. You are from China, but you are out of China for a certain period, and you have certain things to settle down with the government in China in terms of your taxes. You can do it online through an app. So which is amazing. I still believe that a lot of countries which are quite tax heavy, they still do not have an app-based tax filing portal. I have not seen, at least in where I live. So I still have to
Yeah,
go on
same
my
same here
computer.
in the UK. We don't have one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have to go on your computer, or you have to fill a piece of paper and then you have to do it. Of
Yeah.
course, those options are also available in China, but on top of that, you have an app to do all of those
Mm.
things. And also they have kind of tried to systemize their tax regime, and they have given that a phase called global tax system, phase 4, or global tax system, which is in a phase 4 right now. So with every single phase, they are bringing more and more digitalization towards their how the operations regarding HR, regarding payroll, regarding taxes, regarding accounting, and all those things regarding money basically is handled in China, right? Then there are certain income tax related deductions which you will be eligible or you might not be eligible, depending upon your situation, depending upon your earnings, depending upon your family situations. You have to, it will be tailor made and bespoke for you. So you need to speak with your HR partner or your payroll team member in the office, or you need to speak with your dedicated payroll vendor about the details of how to get advantage of those special deductions to reduce your income tax bill in China. And then there are social insurance contribution based adjustments. And the social insurance contribution based adjustments updates are updated on an annual basis, but these are very minimum. I have barely seen any major changes in these kind of social insurance contributions based adjustments over the course of the year. So they mostly say pretty consistent. And then we have also we have also spoken about the personal information protection law implement, which is PIPL. So it has a very strict data handling requirements which affect the payroll processing and cross-border data transfers, which I was talking about, that transferring the data of your employees from one location in China to the location outside of China is pretty difficult. Like if I give my example, I know what my team members in China are getting paid off, but I do not have access to their local files. They are all stored with our local payroll vendor. We do not get access to it because of this regime. So, what are the best practices for multinational organizations? How should you operate, or how should you manage your payroll operations in China? So based on my experience working with international companies over the last 15 plus years, 16 plus years, here are some of the best practices which I can share, which can make your life a bit easier when it comes to making or handling the payroll operations for China. So definitely you have to implement a location specific policy, making sure that if you would like to give any benefit to the employees, which is only dedicated to your employees in China, please make sure that you speak with your payroll vendor, you speak with your tax expert before you implement anything, because that might have some negative tax implications for your employees in China. So just make sure you talk about anything which you would like to add on the payroll, and any benefit policy which you would like to add. Make sure you do speak with your tax experts before implementing that. As I always say, you have to run a payroll with strong controls. So you need to have strong internal controls. You need to ensure that you have a proper paper documentation of everything, whatever you agree with your employees. You must, everything must be signed and with a red stamp in China. So make sure that you have that with you. And then you have to make sure that you keep a scanned copy of that somewhere saved for your own purposes, but the hard copy must always be obtained in China. And then, of course, you can always leverage technology solutions. You can have an in-house payroll system. You can buy a license from a very any renowned payroll company in China. They will be happy to give you a licensed payroll, but then you need to make sure that you also have people who are trained in the Chinese labor law, or the payroll laws or the tax laws, to be able to efficiently run those payroll engines. Otherwise, if you do not have that, my suggestion would be to always have a third-party payroll vendor run the payroll operations for you. And of course, you have to maintain the comprehensive documentation systems. If you have any special arrangements with employees, or you have signed any documents with your workforce in China, make sure you keep those documents safe, because those documents will serve as an audit trail in case of any statutory audits which you might have in China. And also make sure that you have a regular internal controls. From the internal controls point of view, make sure that you do have regular audits for your China operations. Make sure that at least once a year you do check, take out certain samples. If you have a very big workforce, like few hundred thousand, or sorry, few hundred or few thousand employees, make sure that you do carry out frequent audits to make sure that all the necessary documents are in place. Otherwise, if you have a very small workforce, like 10, 15, 20, make sure that you check every single individual's documentation, that it is in place. Do it at least once a year. It will save you a lot of burden in the future. And last but not the least, make sure that you stay informed with the regulatory changes. I know sometimes language could be a barrier when it comes to keeping yourself up to date with the regulations in China. So that is the reason why having a dedicated payroll desk in China, either your own through your own organization, or through any big four like EY, Deloitte, or somebody else, can be your payroll desk. or you can have your own payroll vendor who can keep you up to date with any payroll changes which might be happening in China. Any questions on this, Abu, as of today, or in the meantime I
No,
can.
no, no, no. I think with really, really strong overview there. So thank you very much, BJ. If you, what would you say kind of what would be the industry specific considerations? So if you looked at manufacturing, technology, financial services, and retail, so if you wouldn't mind going through those.
Yeah. So I used to work for a telecommunication company which was both a technology and a manufacturing, because they had a technology which was software and they needed a hardware. So a
Mm,
software without a hardware won't work, and vice versa. So it was quite interesting because we had some factories in China. So they were producing mobile phones, and then also we had the software which was going into the mobile phone. So both the aspects had to be maintained. You have to be very careful when it comes to that, because there is a technology transfer thing which is involved between China and if you are a company which is not based out of China but a foreign company operating in China. So you need to make sure that your technology transfer agreements are in place, because that or you can call them transfer pricing agreements. So they do impact how your payroll cost or how the cost for running the operations will be calculated. So when it comes to the industry specific considerations, so talking about the manufacturing, which is the core of the Chinese economy. So make sure that you have very strong systems to calculate the overtime, because people in China sometimes, if they are working in the manufacturing sector, they do work overtime, they do work in shift, and they do get some production bonuses if they overachieve their targets. So you need to make sure that you have very strong systems to capture those events on your payroll or in your company, so that once as and when those events happen for an individual, then they should flow through the payroll and they should get
mm,
fairly compensated for that. And then from the technology point of view, as I said, you need to have a strong contracts between the home country, between the company from the home country and their Chinese subsidiary. So make sure that you have fairly distributed equity compensation and flexible work arrangements, which sometimes create a unique, challenging payroll calculation, not problems, but challenges. So depending upon if they are supporting evening shifts, or because in China they are almost half a day ahead of Europe and almost a day ahead of US. So sometimes their working hours are based on which region they are supporting. So based on that, you need to make sure that they do get necessary payroll compensation for that as well. And when it comes to their to financial services, I rarely have seen any banks having their shared services in China, because it's quite a sensitive information which will flow
mm,
into China, and vice versa as well. So I think from the financial services point of view, if you're having shared services in China, which is helping you with the general ledger, which is helping with the accounts payable, accounts receivable, or which is helping you with the vendor management. So definitely there will be some performance bonuses given to those employees at the end of the year. So if you have your shared services in China helping you with the financial services point of view for your organization, make sure that you have defined parameters what qualifies to achieve certain levels of performance to be eligible for the performance bonuses, and you have to make sure that those flow through payroll as well. And then also, if your employees are part of retail outlets, then it creates its own challenges as well, because China, on top of being a manufacturing hub, is also is also a consumption hub. So there are a lot of retail related stuff which happens in China. So there could be students who could be working part time. There could be people who could be working full time and part time. So you need to make sure that you capture their payrolls accordingly. And they might have some commission structure based on how much they sell, what kind of product they sell. So you need to have the full inventory of every single thing being tracked, what was sold, by whom it was sold, what was the base price, and then what price it was sell. They might have some negotiation, or it could be a fixed price place as well. So all those parameters has to be captured, and then report it back into payroll, because
Mm.
failing to do so, if your team member or employee reports any irregularity on their payroll or not being compensated fairly for their work, you might be opening door for the statutory audit, and then they might come and basically check all your books, your financial books, your payroll registers, and your HR policies and benefits policies. You might come clean out of it, but it's a lot of pain to go through that. So suggestion is always stay compliant and stay one step ahead of all these requirements as much as possible. Yeah, so that was quite an interesting take on the retail one, because personally I never had any employees who worked in the retail sector, but we all know retail is everywhere in the world.
Yeah.
It is
Yeah.
quite an interesting take on that. But yes, so these are my suggestions about how to manage your payrolls if you are coming from these industries, and I hope I have been able to give some decent overview on the payroll on China.
Thank you, Vijay. You definitely have given a very comprehensive overview. So thank you very much. Now, obviously, the regional variations and complex tax regulations make, I think, Chinese payroll particularly challenging for multinational organizations, right? I think it's probably one of the more complex ones around the world. If we can now focus on our case study to see these concepts in action. So for our case study today, we're looking at a fictional multinational tech company that has recently established offices in multiple Chinese cities with employees across different roles. So Vijay, could you walk us through this scenario and show us how to handle the specific payroll challenges they're facing? Now, I'll share the case study here on screen if I can. There you go. I've shared it now. Hopefully you can see it now, Vijay.
Let me try to zoom in.
So the company's Tech Global.
Yeah.
Tech Global hired 25 staff across Beijing, Shanghai, and Shenzhen, navigating China's complex city-specific payroll regulations proved challenging for their growing multi-location operation. Easy for me to say. If you wouldn't mind walking us through this.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
So yeah, so this Tech Global, which has set up their offices in China. So let's go through that. So they have hired 25 team members across Beijing, Shanghai, and Shenzhen area, which are basically the main hubs of commerce in China. And then they have to make sure that their payroll across these three locations is fully compliant from the Chinese labor law and from the Chinese payroll law as well. So they have hired, for example, they have hired the employees distributed in China. So 8 software developers distributed across all three cities, uh, and then 5 sales representatives with a base salary of, let's say, 18,000 plus commission they have hired, and they have a staff of 3 admin people, and they have a staff of 6 customer support representatives, and they have a staff of 3 senior managers, and three out of these 3 senior managers, let's say 2 of them are from China and one is an expatriate, right? So let's address some of the challenges which they could be facing. So the social insurance contributions, as the first point says, the social contribution rates and salary caps varied between cities, leading to incorrect social insurance deductions and inconsistent total payroll costs. So if they're gonna say that we're gonna apply wherever our managers are based at, and that's everybody's payroll, and they could be based out of Beijing, but the regimes in Shanghai and Shenzhen are a bit different. So for example, the employer contributions in the region of Shanghai, it's close to 16%, and the employer contributions for the Medicare or the medical allowance contributions in the in the Shanghai area is close to 10.5%. And The unemployment contribution, which is pan China right now, in Shanghai, is 0.5%. And then if you have any work related injury, then there is also a contribution for that, which is 0.16%. And then the total employer contribution, and also there is a maternity help contribution, which is 1% in the area of Shanghai. Right? And then also there are the employee contributions, which are 8% for pension, 2% for medical, and then there is an unemployment contribution of 0.5% made by the employees. So, but if you compare that with any other location, these percentages could be entirely different. So you have to make sure that you just do not follow one city regulations. You follow the regulations from different regions of China, and make sure you speak with your payroll vendor and make sure that you have proper checks on your payroll, and make sure you check every single month when you run the payroll that these contributions are correctly applied. So once you have the list of all the percentages in front of you, then you can just rinse and repeat that process each month. And if in case there will be any statutory changes in the regime, then your payroll partner will be able to help you out with that. Right. And then you have a different and the challenge number two is housing fund management. Again, if you're living in a Schengen area, the housing fund management is different than what we have in other areas. So for example, the housing fund management percentage in Schengen area is 5% for employer and 5% for employee. And in compared to Shanghai, the housing fund contribution rate is 7%. So you again have to make sure that you speak with your payroll partner to ensure that they do not apply a flat rate everywhere. They do speak with you, and then they collect all the necessary information about where the employees are based out at, and based on their location, the necessary percentages should be applied. And then, of course, it comes to the individual income tax calculations. So the income tax calculations are again depending upon the salary levels of the individuals, how much bonus and commissions they will be making throughout the year. So you have to make sure that your payroll software is capable of handling those calculations. There could be some special deductions which could be allowed to reduce the tax burden on the employees. These are specifically I mentioned at the beginning of our conversations, like uh, the housing rent contribution can be deducted from the payroll to reduce the tax bill of the employees. There could be certain specific family related situations, number of kids in the family, your age, or if you are looking after your elder parents, you can also obtain some tax credits while you are doing the payroll. So again, this is very subjective to an individual. So it will be a tailor-made income tax regime made for an individual. Certain basic things will remain same in terms of the percentage of the tax, how much tax you should pay based on your scale, and on top of that, you can bring in some bespoke requirements, and so that you can reduce or you can optimize your tax contributions in China. So definitely, from this point of view, if you are in non-compliant, um, you will be facing the wrath of the statutory authorities, which you do not want. And also making sure that if you have a person who is an expatriate, their tax treatment is also well taken care of. So without proper documentation, certain benefits which generally are tax exempt, they will be forced to pay taxes on those benefits because you did not provided certain documentations which are fully signed and stamped. So make sure that you have those fully signed and stamped documentation for your expat team member. For example, if they have any rental agreement, and if they are making any payments regarding of their housing receipts, make sure that you do obtain those documents from them. If their kids are going into school in China, then you also make sure that you obtain that necessary information from them, necessary proofs of their kids going to the school in China, so that you can give them that tax exemption. And if they have any travel receipts, if they are traveling from China to their home country, certain level of travel is tax exempted, so they can also take advantage of that, provided they have submitted all the necessary documentation for proofreading and making sure that this is kept as a kept in place for the audit purposes. So in the absence of documentation, if they have taken these benefits but they have not provided you these backups, but they have just verbally told you or emailed you, they will be losing out on the tax benefits from these categories. And then processing the payroll is one thing, and then it's also about processing and also about making sure that you also report the payroll correctly to the authorities. So you have a few, let's say, aspects of payroll. One was collecting the data, then making sure that you process the payroll based on the best possible advice you get from your payroll vendor or your payroll partner, and then you pay your employees, whatever bank you use in China, and then after that you are also responsible for reporting the payroll to the authorities. So, in order to report the payroll to the authorities in China, the income tax withholding is reported to the authorities on a monthly basis, and then then the social insurance is reported to the authorities on a quarterly basis for each location. So social security is being reported and paid on a quarterly basis. Monthly individual income tax is being reported and paid on a monthly basis. And then there is an annual IIT reconciliation support. So it looks like it's basically called individual income tax regime. The name is very confusing. It might say it's an individual income tax. So why should an employer be submitting an individual income tax for an employee? But this is a ruling in China that employers are responsible for providing the support for submitting the individual income tax returns for the employees in China. And if there will be any tax refund which will be coming out of that filing or that reconciliation which employers are required by law to submit on behalf of the employees, any tax refund, if it will be there, it will go directly to the bank account of the employee. It will not come to the employees, because this is the individual income tax return which is submitted by the employers in China. And then you also have to make sure that all the employees you have in China, you make sure that their employment contracts are filed with the local labor bureaus. Whatever the local labor bureaus are there, whether it is from the manufacturing, whether it is from the retail, whether it is from the technology point of view, or any other, or a research and development. Accordingly, you have to make sure that your paperwork is complete and is filed with the labor bureaus. And as always, if you are unsure about any of these things, make sure that you speak with your payroll provider, and your payroll provider should be able to complete almost every aspect of payroll reporting requirements for you. So you don't have to worry about doing it yourself. So suggestion is hire the expert, and hire a good expert, and make sure that you give them good data, because no matter how good the expert is, but if they have a bad data to work on, they're going to produce bad results. So if you have a good experts, make sure you give them good data to process, and then if the good data is with them, then they're going to produce good results for you, and then you will be fairly compliant there as well.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Vijay. In terms of practical solutions and common pitfalls you could see, any considerations there?
Yeah, I think from the pitfall point of view, again, I'm going to repeat myself, that make sure that you are aware that in China, payrolls are calculations are dependent upon the location. So whenever you are doing any payroll calculations, make sure that you keep in consideration the location of your team members, the location of your office, and accordingly the social security regimes and the tax regimes will be applied. This is a most common mistake which I've seen happening if people in my previous organizations, where we made a couple of those mistakes, but we were fairly quick to catch them and correct them, right? So location-based processing, payroll processing is very critical. And then the another pitfall is not maintaining the proper documentation. So make sure that you have proper documentation management system. Whether you use nowadays, you can use DocuSign, but I'm not yet sure if DocuSign is fully approved by the government of China. So if it is not fully approved by the government of China, that you can use DocuSign to obtain the necessary signatures. Make sure that every single thing is provided to you with wet signatures, and then you stamp them, and you keep a proper documentation, proper copy of that document saved somewhere for the future audit perspective, right? And then you have to make sure that you also follow the compliance or the filing and the payments calendar. Make sure that your income taxes are paid and filed on a monthly basis. Your social security and other allowances, contributions are paid and filed on a quarterly basis. And then, of course, there will be some annual reconciliation requirements, annual filing requirements, which make sure that you do work with your payroll provider and do submit them on a timely basis. And then based on where your offices are, based on the location, make sure that you have a full inventory of your annual list of filings with the authorities, and towards the employees, so that you are compliant from that perspective. So I think these are the major pitfalls which, if you are from the payroll industry, that you will be well versed with. But if you're not, then we have just told you about it.
Thank you, Vijay. That's an excellent walk through the tech global challenges there. I'm sure many of our listeners and attendees here today have faced similar situations, similar challenges, right? So thank you, because obviously the regional variations, especially can be quite tricky, right? Managing employees across multiple Chinese cities. So we've got a Q&A session now. We've got about 4 minutes to go. If I can just go through probably one question here, I think that's probably what we've got enough time for. So how should companies handle the annual adjustment of social insurance contributions bases in China?
Okay. Again, the first and the foremost thing is to make sure that you have a payroll vendor who will be able to advise you on the necessary documentation which needs to be collected and provided to them, so that they can handle this requirement for you. However, the annual adjustments to social insurance bases are a critical compliance task in China, and that is why it is mostly handled by the local tax experts or the local labor law experts in China. So the new bases are generally announced in April and July, depending upon the location. Again, it's a location specific thing, which is again coming back again and again in our conversation. And they are calculated based on the previous year average of average wages. So the average wages is your monthly salary plus your overtime plus any other commissions or any other bonuses you might have earned. So all those things will contribute towards the average wages for the previous year, and based on that, your social insurance contributions will be adjusted in the current year. And there could also be an implementation. Uh, with that, I mean is that you might have acquired a new company and you might have received a new set of employees from the previous organization. So make sure that when you are bringing the employees from the previous organization and under your payroll regime, you make sure that you do obtain their payroll data from the previous year if they are this year your employees, and then so that you have full data on your payroll system to be able to calculate the average wages for those employees. So the best practices, in my opinion, for that would be to make sure that you create a monitoring system of across all locations, that make sure that you have regular audits and regular checks of your data, that you have everything up to speed and you are not missing any documentation or your payroll systems are basically working in the most optimal way as it is possible, right? And then also, as I said about the payroll, you need to make sure that you have necessary protocols built into the payroll system to bring in those adjustments and apply those adjustments. And then you also make sure that you communicate to your employees proactively. Sometimes those social insurance changes, very rarely I have seen they are detrimental, but most of the times they are beneficial for the employees. But still, it is advisable that you do communicate upfront to your team members, so that they are aware that what's coming their way, if there are any adjustments which gonna be hitting their paycheck at some point in time because of these adjustments, so they can be well aware of that in advance. And if in case there are going to be any retroactive adjustment, it's always better to make sure that you do inform your team members in advance that some retroactive adjustments are coming, and provide them with full details about what those retrospective adjustments are, so that you minimize the disruption and you minimize the Q&A which might happen or appear after the paycheck has been issued. So make sure that you do inform your team members upfront about that. And I think the most common issue is the delayed communication. So make sure that you do not delay the communication. This is the most common error in compliance, is the delayed communication. So make sure that you communicate with your employees on a regular basis and in a timely manner. Sometimes when you communicate with your team members, no matter where you are in the world, it just solves 99.9% of the problems, because they are aware what is happening, they know what is coming, and they know where to go if they have any questions. and that basically weeds out majority of the compliance issues from the employee's perspective upfront. And then from the employer perspective, make sure that you do maintain good inventory of your processes, good inventory of your procedures, documents, stamps, and make sure that you do regular audits of your operations, whether it is the HR operations, whether it is the payroll operations, at least once a year, if not less, if not more. And make sure that whenever there is any requirement or any request from these local statutory offices, you do respond to them in a timely manner. Because in China, if you do not reply to any letter which you have received from the statutory offices, it is not seen very well upon the organization. So that's something also which you as a payroll professional or as a compliance person in China should be aware of. Yeah.
Thank you ever so much, Vijay. The complexity of the Chinese payroll certainly requires specialized knowledge and careful attention to regional variations in compliance requirements. But as we come to the end of this Chinese session, I want to express huge thanks to Vijay for his time and sharing your expertise and insights on the unique challenges of Chinese payroll. To our audience, thank you for joining us on this important stop on our 24-hour journey around the world. Remember that all sessions from Global Payfest 25 will be available on demand, so you can revisit them any session that you may wish. But Vijay, thank you again for your time. Really enjoyed speaking with you, and I'm sure our global audience will really appreciate the insights that you've shared today.
Thank you, my pleasure. And best of luck to everybody. And I hope that I was able to contribute a little bit to your knowledge database from today's session. Nobody is 100% perfect. If there are certain things which have moved on and my knowledge is a bit stale, then please do drop a comment so that I can update my knowledge base as well.
Thank you, Vijay. Next up is Lewis and Yalapa with our stopper India. But again, thank you again, Vijay, and I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Take care. Cheers. Bye.